Buonasera, credo che siamo pronti a cominciare. Devo parlare italiano stasera o solamente in inglese? Che ne pensiamo? Go ahead, in English. All right, okay. Thank you, Carla. As probably our token Italian tonight. I don't. Benvenuto anche dietro da paperbacks. I normally start in Italian to welcome anybody who's with us, who's Florentine, Italian, whatever, before going into English, which is the language of the British Institute of Florence, which is the international educational, cultural, social centre for Florence, and the international language is English. That's why we use English, not because we don't like Italian, it's just for communication. So in a moment, I'll introduce Mark, but first, as always, I'll just say a couple of things about what's coming up. Tomorrow night, the Wednesday lecture is Lynn Caddison, our friend who spent the last 10 years burrowing away in the virgin archives of Stefano Baldini and has unearthed all sorts of vaguely shocking through to truly scandalous things, has made herself pretty unpopular with a lot of people in the art world around the world. But she will tell us some more tomorrow from her original research in the archives about what Bardini was up to as a dealer in Renaissance art at the back end of the 19th century. Renaissance sometimes in quotation marks. So that's a good lecture. She's a good lecturer. It's fun. Next Tuesday, here this time next week, we welcome back Phelan Burgoyne, who's our kind of resident British Florentine jazz man. He's an exceptionally good jazz composer and band leader and percussionist, and he's working with a guy called Fred Thomas out of London, who's a pianist, a very renowned and reputed musician out of the UK. So it'll be a really nice jazz concert next Tuesday. And then the other thing I want to draw your attention to is that next Thursday 27th, just before Easter, we've got our next wine tour down to Basilica Caravaggio. And it is true, the bus is very nearly full. So if you were thinking about going down on a wine tour, great wine, followed by a superb lunch at Cantinetta di Vignana, get in touch with us tonight, tomorrow, to grab the last couple of seats on the bus. So enough of that. Now, for this evening's Meet the Authors, I'm really pleased to welcome Mark Anthony Jarman to the British Institute of Florence. Mark is, yay! Mark is Canadian, but also a serious traveller, and also I think a bit Irish, if not a lot Irish. I get the impression, yeah. So, 40 years a writer, certainly has written poetry, has written one or two novels. A lot of really fine travel writing, but above all, he's the master of the short story, highly literary short stories with a lot of poetic vibe inside them and all sorts of influences. Up or down? Yes. Up, a bit closer, Okay. His main formation was in Iowa in a creative writing workshop there, and for the last many years he's been teaching at the University of New Brunswick, where he's also been the editor of a literary magazine called The Fiddlehead, which has been running for about 20 years, I think. The longest running literary magazine in Canada. Yeah. Whoops. And just last year launched a new one, which has also got lots of beautiful pictures in it, called Canon, which is here tonight. So he's an editor and a convener and an encourager of other writers, as well as being a master himself. So that's a brief introduction. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to really explore Mark's writing, because it's not your everyday communal garden writing. It's something quite special. And so I've asked Mark if he would be prepared to read to us. And we're going to read 3, maybe even 4 pieces spread through the evening, and then we're going to look at what's going on, talk about a life in writing and traveling, and see where it goes. And later on, if you want to join in, of course you can. So, begin with, up on the screen there is a picture of a silver mine. So, over to you, Mark. Tell us about the silver mine. Probably use a microphone.
Yeah. So thanks very much for coming out and having me. Can you hear all right? Um, yeah, this is very nice. I was in Florence last year and I never would have thought something like this would happen. So it's kind of very nice for this year. And thanks to Simon, the Institute, and Sarah, and person over there. Thanks to everyone for involved with this. But the painting, it's Canadian painter Frank Carmichael, and he's in what's known as the Group of Seven, and it's fairly well known in Canada, but probably not everywhere else. And I got asked to write what I think was a postcard story or flash fiction to match a painting. And there was going to be an anthology, and it was a really nice anthology. It came out; it was very well done. But a lot of the more famous paintings had been taken, and I was looking, and I had not even a really good art book. I had an art book that was for kids, my sons, and I looked through it, and I really liked that one. And I was talking about just a few minutes ago that I liked the point of view was up above, looking down, and so when I wrote the story, I ended up putting a float plane into it. And I like to emphasize anyone who writes, I use a lot of clippings from newspapers. I just find I'm so sad that newspapers are kind of on their way out because they're the best thing in the world. And for a writer, it was just all this free information. And I saw a clipping while I was partway through this story. It was in the Guardian, actually, just one of the little pieces, and it was that someone had given birth on a plane. And I thought, well, I like the idea of the float plane anyways, because in Ontario it's very common to go from place to place by float planes. And the guy, the pilot, had a quote which is in my story, so I'll wait till I get to it. But I depend on clippings. I think almost 3 out of the 4 pieces that I might read from tonight, there's parts that came out of newspaper clippings. I just find them very handy. And I'm not good with plot. So I tend to need some kind of incident, something central that I can then write around. And Simon has been very tactful, that I'm not, my writing's not for everyone. I get rave reviews that said, you may not like this book, right? So, it's like, so I don't know what to do about that. Anyway, so I'll read some. It's a very short one. It was flash fiction, and if you don't mind, I'll play the harmonica. I usually like to play harmonica a little bit too, so I hope this isn't going to overwhelm the sound system or anything. This is a minor key harmonica. It's harmonic, and it's almost what I think it was like kind of a gypsy jazz scale. And if you hear it, you'll just hear a different scale to it. That's enough. You can get a sound if you just get. Yes, sometimes dogs like harmonica. Sometimes they howl along. Yeah, so let's get my. Notice the handout. I think I'll stand. If that's all right. So I assume there'll be a quiz after. Yeah, you have to pay attention. Yeah. So yeah, this is a story called Silver Mine. I think the painting might be Ontario Silver Mine. I'm not even sure. Is it? Yeah. And one other thing I mentioned is that over the years I've taught Hills Like White Elephants by Hemingway a lot, and this painting just reminded me the way he uses different sides of the valley. And you may notice in the foreground there, the hills look stripped. And then I found out, and again, this is while I was working on the piece, I found out that they actually did strip the hills to expose the veins, make it easier to find them. So it's Silver Mine. In the Twin Otter float plane, we rise above the headphone tower and sent men down in a rusty cage. 7 towers lean, 7 ochre beams above the valley's mal de terre, on the mine where my dark-haired brother was lost. Trapped in the crooked halls of slopes and drifts, They were one thing, then became another, pinned in the face. No resurrection from a rock burst, a choke slinger, a percussion drill. To find the rich surface veins, or that distinct line in sparkling rock, the look of love, the look of money. We talked the hill's vegetation into vanishing with high pressure hoses until the lake below us drained and closed like a door, and erased. We saw denuded stone like a flensed animal, coat strips, our hill a pale elephant scraped down the white fat and bone. Then the veins were easy. Clouds in our sky mirror wrinkled hills that carry bacon lard, clouds like ghostly fingers stretching in the heavens, where our tiny plane tilts wings and welcomes a wet new passenger. In the narrow plane's back seat, a woman's water has broken and her baby seeks escape, a child climbing to us. From the drift's dark chamber, the purple child finally emerges, as from a mine running with water, limbs not moving, not breathing, covered in what looks like blueberry yogurt. That one's dead, I say. Then the throat opens. It's alive. I take my spare white t-shirt, dry the child, wrap the child. A horse with a foal would do this with its own tongue, its mouth. At the mouth of the mine, camera and flashbulbs waited for even one miner to emerge. The expectant mother radioed in to be picked up, the rippling contractions hitting hard weeks early. An extraction, a plane drifting to a dock, like any other dock in the rain, 1,000 rains peppering 1,000 lakes. Then, up in the strange clouds, I wipe away strange yogurt. It was one thing and became another. That must be a first, I say to the pilot. Second, actually, we had another baby back there, 3 years ago? But yeah, real rare to take off with 6 and land with 7. And that was the line from The Guardian, which I thought, you can't write a better line than that. I went to war and my brother stayed working the face. Up here, cameras wait. The prop shut down and we drift to a pier in beautiful silence, my favorite part. Place towers rise like wooden temples over the hilltops, and the center of the earth is a fountain. The two-sided brain translates, celebrates, 2 sides to each twisting valley, and I drift and slumber, knowing I was a horse with a wet foal, and I dried the fluid while the company wiped green hillsides clean. And this painting, by the way, it's from quite a while ago, but I think the painter was aware of the environmental impact. You know, the lake below is destroyed, the hills just stripped, and so I'm kind of interested in that. Almost got added as I was writing it, just that idea of the environmental stuff.
And the 2 sides to the valley. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see one side's green and one side's stripped.
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm going to offer now, I've had a bit of time to read and think about this beautiful short story. I want to just take us through it, looking at some of the things that are going on, which I've picked up. And there's loads and loads more that you might have seen, and Mark might think I'm talking nonsense, but as an audience, a reader, I'm entitled to respond. And the reason I want to do this is I want to help us to navigate into the kind of writing that we're looking at, because you'll have noticed straight away that this is not ordinary discourse of what happened in plain, very clear language, and then you turn the page and what happens next. This has got for want of another word, a pretty strong poetic quality to it in the use of language. At times, it's quite close to prose poetry. At other times, it isn't. It becomes a clip from The Guardian. So I'm just going to go. That's why I gave you comments. I'm just going to go through this and point to some of the things that I've picked up, having read it 3 or 4 times and thought about it. And just to, I guess, to offer us all a way into thinking about what Mark's doing, and perhaps help us as we listen to some of the other work. So taking it from the top, there was extreme, as Mark read it, I heard a really strong rhythm in the very first sentence. We rise the head-framed tower that sent men down in the rusty cage. There's a lot of rhythm going on. And then for me, 7 towers lean and 7 oak are beautiful. The repetition of 7, for me, sent me zinging straight into the A World of Bob Dylan, and 7 people dead on the South Dakota farm, and the North Country miners who wind up dying in the mines and being destitute. So maybe nobody's ever responded to those 2 words quite like that before, but it just went straight off into that world, and by the repetition of 7.
Well, it's definitely there. There's a mining disaster in Nova Scotia where the newspaper men waited outside waiting for someone to come up, and so I was familiar with that. So yeah, and music is a huge influence on me. So I do pick here and there and just see if I can fit it in.
And 7 is such a powerful number in so many ways. It's got sort of all kinds of associations with luck and in some cultures, and lack of luck in other cultures. The 78 itch or whatever. But for me, it was definitely the Dylan line. 7 people dead on South Dakota.
And I don't even know
if that repeats it. This is another 7 people are born. So you know, yeah. Anyhow, that's an example of what you can hear in here legitimately. I would propose. Then, as you go forward, you start getting the 2 stories start bouncing off of each other. So right at the beginning, you know, in these mines, a brother was lost. Miners died, right? And then there's a poetic description of how the hills came to be like that. We taught the hills vegetation into vanishing with high pressure hoses until the lake below us drained and closed like a door, or weld erased. And you get the idea of the pale earth and scraped down to white fat and bone. And then you shift the perspective up to the plain, looking down on mirror wrinkled hills, the color of bacon lard. So white fat, bacon lard, you're exploring that metaphor further from the 2 different perspectives. And then towards the end of that 3rd paragraph, again, the other story comes in, which is the back of the street, a woman's about to have a baby. And then at the 2nd page, these 2 stories start intertwining in all kinds of really interesting ways. So I pick up on, again, on words which come back. So right at the top of the 2nd page, from the drift's dark chamber, the purple child finally emerges, as from a mine running with water. Okay, so the child being born is similar to coming out of a dark mine underground, and the child finally emerges, and then the 3-4 lines down, outside the mine, cameras and flashbulbs waiting for even one miner to emerge. So the repetition of emerge is linking absolutely in presumably the observer's head, the surviving brother, the one who went to war. He's thinking the 2 things are kind of mixing up in his head. And in the middle of that, he's as the baby comes out, what does the surviving brother say? He says, "That one's dead." But then it turns out to be alive, unlike his own brother, who right at the beginning couldn't come out because it says losses. Into the face, no resurrection from a rock burst. No coming back from that. But the baby is kind of resurrected. Thinks it's dead at first, but it comes alive. Then there's cameras waiting at the mouth of the mine. Come back towards the end when the plane is coming into the airport, and on the pier, cameras are waiting to see the emerging child. This time, one comes out. The other time, none did. You have and then towards the end, it all comes together in a very. So the guardian thing is really interesting. I'm really delighted to discover that was taken from, some found sentences, found language, which is then put into the story, because in this story it is a moment when you go out of the reverie into the objective world where people are having a conversation about what's happened. It's quite humorous as well, which is nice.
I think so.
But it's one bit where it becomes objective rather than subjective, because you're recording what people actually said. And then just right at the end, it turns into just a beautiful poetic meditation on the whole story. So place towers rise like wooden temples over hilltops, and the center of the earth is a fountain. And that a fountain that can resonate in 10,000 different ways. It's just as an idea, but also where it all comes from, out of the mind, whatever, out of the woman's body. It's the origin of something.
I kind of owe that to a friend, a friend Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeremy Gilmer. He works as an engineer, mining engineer, Africa, Brazil, and I was kind of quizzing him. And I also had a student from Northern Ontario, and I was asking her, so I was even getting some of those terms like the percussion drill, just kind of asking people for things. But Jeremy said a huge problem with engineering is water. And that, if you dig a hole in the ground, if you putting in a dam, engineers have to deal with the water. And so that stuck in my head. And then I was thinking when the childbirth got added to the story, because it wasn't there at first. When it got added, I thought, well, that really fits just the idea of fluid. I think there's fluid involved in all of the operations.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And actually, then we have the wonderful image of the horse licking the yogurt off the colt with its mouth, and then 3 words later, at the mouth of the mine. So the repetition of mouth again.
There's a few things
crosses
like
the two stories together.
Yeah, even like can't remember. I'd have to look, but I circle things like that for when I'm reading to try and there's body and there's body, there's mouth and there's mouth.
Yeah.
The letter T, I think there's the plane tilts and the tower. I can't remember, but
yeah,
I like
definitely some alliterations which read very well.
That's why I don't sell very well.
Yeah, all of this is why it doesn't sell very well. You have to think about this stuff. You have to really read and read again and think, and actually read aloud helps a lot because a lot of the meaning comes out of the rhythm. And then, so right at the very end, the two-sided brain translates, celebrates, 2 sides to each twisting valley, and I drift in slumber, knowing I was a horse with a wet coat, and I dried the fluid whilst the company wiped green hills clean. So it wraps it all together in a frankly intensely poetic couple of sentences. So that's what's happening in these, 500 words? Not even.
Yeah, it's very short.
Yeah. So I hope I didn't do a terrible disservice to what you've written, Mark.
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, I hear my name. That's good. Yeah, I don't always get attention.
My friend Mark.
Okay.
Narration is really tight. In your process, do you start off writing tightly and then edit, or do you write in a more expansive way and then edit on?
It's like I use fragments, and I guess Lauren isn't here, because I visited her class. I was showing them some of my journals. They're really messy, really rough. I just put anything down. I don't use complete sentences, and I leave a ton of space so that I can go back and repeat sounds and add some, like read the Guardian, and then I put this, that's going to go in there. So it's very loosey-goosey. It's not controlled at all. But then I just try to do it later. I just think I'll fix it up later. And then I just go back and try to tighten it up. And I just try to lean, especially if it's a postcard, so where it's got to be a shorter amount. I just try to lean on every word. Does this have to be here? Does this have to be here? And so it's both. Like I start off free-form, and then I work on it more later. Try to make it tighter. Well, thank you. Yeah. Like a word, does it have to? Yeah, I don't think in those terms. I just don't. But it's a good question, though. I think I found I was sending a story into a CBC contest. What we talked about, it's like BBC or something, and they kept bringing the word count down, and eventually it's going to be like 3 words or something. But I had to cut had to cut a number of words, and I found it a really good exercise. So I've mentioned it to my students. I know they'll never do it, but it's just like I keep a short version of the story and a longer version, and it's really good to just look through and go, I have to cut 500 words. Where are they going to come from? So it's not only a word, but it's also a whole paragraph. Will it survive without this paragraph? But at the same time, I love adding. I love adding all, like I said, I leave space because I know I'm going to add and add and add. So to me, it's almost like, I don't know, is that how they make candles? Like adding and I can't remember. There's some metaphor like that with writing.
I'm actually going to start taking the microphone around because I'm recording this and don't get that.
When you cut a paragraph, don't you try to say the same thing with fewer words in sense you're refining as opposed to just eliminating?
It's both. Like if I can cut half the paragraph, then that's good. I've got those words gone. But sometimes you look and just think, I can actually move from this paragraph, skip that paragraph, and I'll keep, like I said, I'll keep a longer version. I never feel like I can't throw anything out. I have to keep it. But there's times you just realize this piece will work without this paragraph in the middle. It'll just, and I love tangents. I love throwing different things in. So it makes it easier to cut because they don't always have to be there. So I think both.
Hey, Mark, I'm curious. You said that music is very important.
Yeah.
So how important is a rhythm in terms of your writing?
I hope.
And when you make and when you think about those the cuts or the editing or
Yeah.
how important is it to keep a certain rhythm? It seems to me, reading this, that there's rhythm there. Just curious.
I definitely try for that. Now, when I was younger, I had no idea. I remember a teacher saying, another student, there was a really nice rhythm to this passage. And I was thinking, I have no idea what he's talking about. I just do not know. And I can't dance. I don't have rhythm, but I really do. And when my first book came out, I got thrown out to do readings with no preparation at all. And so I started, like in these ones, you can see, like I put spaces, I put lines to pause, stop here, and I also cut out words I know I'm going to trip over. And so I try to make it smoother. And so my reading copies might be different than say a published copy. But it's something I worked at. And now even I hear it in my head without doing it out loud. Like I'll just be reading something at night and thinking, could go this way, or could go this way. And then I think, well, I like the rhythm of that better. And I think, the whole story has its balance and rhythm. Is, if something comes up early, I think I want to use it again later. Even you talk about repetition of things, and I really like doing that. I think so.
That's great. We're getting into this. I like this.
I just wanted to appreciate one little additional part of the story, where the props turn off, and it provides a deep contrast to all the action that's going on in the mine and with the people on the reporters waiting on the pier, and the baby acting, crying, having action in the back. And you just have this beautiful spot where the props shut down and we drift to the pier in beautiful silence.
That's one of my favorite lines in there. It's not striking, really, but it's just, if you're on a prop plane, they're really noisy. You often have to put in earplugs, and then when it stops, it's quiet, but they do just drift for a minute and then hit the dock and put ropes and stuff. But that's my favorite part. I just love that part. And so that's kind of biographical. It's funny you pull out that one line, because that's, yeah. Because a lot of the other stuff is borrowed, but that line, that's definitely me. So glad you brought it.
And what's wonderful is that you then, at the end of that, the props shut down and drift to a pier in beautiful silence. And then you say, my favorite part. That's your favorite line of the story.
Yeah. I forgot that was there. I don't have these memorized.
No, but I mean, I like to think that some of this is is a wonderful accident. And maybe sometimes
Definitely.
you don't know it's there until much later when somebody points to it being there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sure a story like this is very heavily worked, and you must be going over it a lot to get it that precise.
Yeah.
That compact.
Well, I kind of love that part. Like I like doing a printout of a story I'm working on. I go to the bar and I just mark it up and you know, it changes. And then I've got to enter that. Ray Carver visited at Iowa when I was there. I don't know if everyone knows the lady Ray Carver, but I heard that he had made it enough that he could pay someone to do his typing. So he would mark up the stories, give it back to this person. They would type it up and give him a clean printout, and then he could mark it up again. I really like that part. And I think you're talking about accident. Like there's times you just, you know, get a word, and sometimes, you know, at 2 a.m. you get a different word than you would getting up at dawn. You know, like, and so I kind of like that, just being open to it.
Thank you.
Well, it seems like this is a lot more than 2 pages when I read it. And that to me is kind of the sense, getting a sense of how you put an image out there. And you've moved on to another image, and I'm not through with the first one. And that to me is kind of the sense of depth in here, or covering a lot of ground, or anyway, the images just keep coming up, and there's not enough. I have to reread it to get not just, and that sort of breaks up your flow a little bit, but I try to reread it with your flow. And so this will take a while for me to finish.
Yeah. And one of the things I find with work like this, and also with the more distilled version yet, which is we call poetry, is reading it aloud to, even if you're on your own, is incredibly valuable and important. That's how you find the rhythms. That's how you hear the words as well as see them. And it really is a good way to opening up and extracting all that's in there so few words. So.
I have a few short questions, and I do apologize. Tell me to keep quiet. Have you attended a birth?
I have.
Okay. Have you been in a situation where there's been an unexpected birth in a place that wasn't
No.
supposed to be?
No.
No. So this was, yeah. So I agree with Mac about the images that linger, and then one goes back and rereads them. But I do only have one thing, is that it's waters, not water. Waters break.
No.
Just
Singular.
okay. And we talk about waters.
Serious. The water.
One
Yeah.
water, many waters.
Yeah. Well, if it gets published in the UK, I'll make that change. Very literally.
Waters have broken. It's also plural in Italian. So it's I don't know how many words in there, a couple of hundred, 200-300 words in these 2 pages.
Probably between 4 and 5, and I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm just interested in how long this process is to get to this place.
I can't remember. I don't know. I mean, some stories go really fast, and others take a long time. And there's no pattern. You know, I remember someone asking Leonard Cohen, "Where do you get these ideas?" And he was like, "Well, if I knew, I would go back there." You know, like it's so, yeah. So I've had some where they come out really quickly, and others they just, you know, I got to work on. I'm a bit of a terrier. Like I'll just keep worrying the bone. Like I'll just keep at it and at it and at it. But I just noticed both ways. Like some are fast. I think as I've gotten older and written more of them, I think the editing goes faster. You know, I think it's just like playing music. You know, you just get kind of better at it over it the more practice you have. And so I've noticed that where I feel like I can, like I was working on a story. We were in Venice at the beginning of this trip, and a pickpocket was kind of shadowing me. And I ended up writing a story about it, and it came together. I'm still tinkering, but it came together fairly quickly. But I've had others that, you know, it might work a year on a story. Like you're just not, you know, not satisfied with it. But when you start getting, so you're just changing, commas and little things, you know, you're getting closer to it. But there's no formula. I know teaching creative writing, students often wish I had some formula, open up their skull, put it in, and they know what to do. And there isn't. Like, it's different for every person. You just have to find what works for you. No.
I may be sort of out of my mind with this question, but you said your story started from the genesis of the painting.
Yeah.
And the painting is about strip mining. I found, and you describe it as sort of a collection of ideas pulled from The Guardian or written down in a journal, et cetera, et cetera. As I heard that reading that Simon did, I found it a terribly sad story. It's about life and death. It's about the life of the land. The painting shows green. The words are used to describe the mountains stripped down, the fat showing, etc. The thrusting of the mine, the brother not coming back dead, the baby being born, maybe it's dead. Oh my goodness, it's alive. And the people waiting, you know, is this going to be life? Is this going to be death? Is this a shock? Why are we rushing down there? Because it's a cataclysmic event that happened in the airplane. It's really, for me, a very tragic statement that looks at life and death and what we are doing, what humans are doing to the planet. The birth is a kind of an existential example of, even though we strip and we make it dead, something can come back. Did you have any of those thoughts?
Not exactly that way, but I'd like to think that they're both in there. There is definitely death. And there's even irony that the one guy goes off to war, which you think is more dangerous. The brother that stays home is the one who gets killed. But I was hoping the birth, the fountain, those are more positive. Even the different sides of the valley, still a green side. And as I said, the paintings from a long time ago, really before people were concerned about climate change and the environment, but I felt it was in the painting. So I wanted to bring that in. And I don't think there's a ton, but I felt like the horse with the foal is very positive and the company stripping the mountain is negative. And so they're both in there. And so I don't really worry about, like, I'm not, when I write, I don't think, I want to make sure everyone has hope at the end of this story. I think I'm probably the opposite. I'm probably thinking it is kind of, things are kind of bleak, you know, but you always hope for something. And sometimes I even put on kind of a fake upbeat ending, you know, because magazines prefer that.
You offer us that possibility with the line, the two-sided brain translates, celebrates.
Yeah, and there's both sides available, you know. And so we hope,
and that's showing the painting. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
So we hope we'll do more.
They do it. They come to a place that they're not really clear about, and then it's done, and they go, yeah. That's what I mean.
I have no way of knowing. I just thought a long time later, and then I, you know, I'm not scholarly, but I did a little bit of research on mining, and then I realized that those hills had been stripped. Yeah. And so I thought, just as a writer, I thought, well, that's fascinating. I've got to use that somehow. So I don't think, is it good or bad? It's almost like, is it interesting? And so,
and is the process partly about what emerges when you start writing something? Then things start happening.
Definitely. Yeah, I could not predict where this story is going to go.
Sure. Okay. And then we've got a lot out of this very first piece. We've got more readings to come. They're somewhat longer, and we won't be able to go into quite so much depth on all of them. But I thought it was a useful exercise to get us all attuned to what Mark is up to. So I think we can probably jump into the next one if you're ready.
Else we'll be here all night. So what Birdman's it next? So this is the title story from the book. My selected story is called Burn Man. It's Burn Man on a Texas Porch. And I was kind of interested in this one. And maybe again, this is negative or bleak, I'm not sure, or happy. I was interested in the changes people go through over a long time versus someone like a burn victim where it's just instant, you know, and my high school just had like, I don't know, the 50-year reunion or something, I'm not even sure, but I saw some pictures from them and I didn't recognize a single person. Like they had all really changed. And so I wrote this probably when I was maybe in my 40s or something, but I was really interested in that idea of changes, that kind of slow change versus someone having that change just thrust on you. It can be all sorts of things. And I had a landlord, Glenn, who this actually happened to, but it wasn't as extreme, but he was in a camper and woke up and he was on fire. And so again, as a writer, and I was a student, like I was an undergrad student when he told me that story. And I just thought, okay, I've got to use that at some point. It took me a while to find when to use it, but I just thought that's kind of amazing. So it builds over time, I guess. And I think that's about it. There's a couple of quotes at the beginning to read from. First one's Bertrand Russell. Men who are unhappy, like men who sleep badly, are always proud of the fact. And this one's from Orwell. At 50, everyone has the face they deserve. So I'm not sure if you agree with this something. I'm glad people are laughing because I find my writing very funny, but the reviews are all like, oh, this is so bleak, you know, this is so, as I said, the reviews are often like, you're probably not even going to like this book, but it's really good. Yeah. And even the very end, this is a shorter version of the story. It's not the whole story would be here much longer, but I think the line is funny, and I heard from an illustrator in California that he laughed out loud when he read it. And I was very happy to hear that. So you'll see the last line. So it's been a Texas porch. Propane slept in the tank and propane leaked while I slept. Blew off the camper door and split the tin walls where we met like shy strangers kissing. Blew the camper door like a safe, and I sprang from sleep into my new life on my feet in front of a befuddled crowd, my new life on fire, waking the whoosh and tourist dull teenagers staring at my bent form, trotting noisily in the campground with flames living on my calves and flames gathering and glittering on my shoulders. Cool, the teens think secretly, smoke like nausea in my stomach, and me burning with Catholic guilt, thinking now I've done it, then thinking, done what? What have I done? Slept during the day with my face dreaming on a Sedora pillow, and now my blue eyes are on fire. I'm okay, we'll be fine, except I'm hoovering all the oxygen around me and burning like a circus poster, flames taking more and more of my shape. Am I moving or are they? I'm hooked into fire. To run seems an answer. Run in privacy, I run dark as dog bane and daisies and dune palms, hearing bagpipes and whistling in my head. My fat burning like red wax, fat in the fire now. Alone, I want to do this alone, get away from the others. I can't see, bounce off trees and parked cars, noise in my ears the whole time. The other campers catch me and push me under a tent, the blue of a Chinese rug, trying to smother me. But soon the tent is melting, merrily burning with me while everyone in the world turns picnic Kool-Aid and apple juice and ice water from the styrofoam coolers. Tourists burn their hands trying to extinguish me. My face feels like a million white-hot bullets. I'm yelling and riding. One of my shoes burns happily by itself on the road. Where does my skin end and the skin of their melted tourist tent begin? At some point in this year of our Lord, I began to refer to myself in third person as a double. Burn Man enters the Royal Jubilee Burn Unit. Burn Man enters the saline painful sea. Burn Man reads every word of the local rag despite its numerous failings. Listens to MC5 on vinyl. Listens to Johnny Cash's best-known ballad. I'm not dealing with this well, the doctors tell me. I'm not noble. They carried me in the burnt blue tent, a litter born from battle, from defeat on the fields of fire and disassembly lines, and into 3 months of shaking, bandaged pain. Your muscles go after you burn, but if you work out, the skin grafts won't stretch over the larger muscles. Grafted skin is not as flexible as real skin. Skin is your cage. Once straight, now I'm crooked. I lack a landscape that is mine. A doctor shone a light at the blood vessels living in the back of my retina. I saw the trickle-down Mars and a map of my own blood, twin red planets lodged in my skull. I wrote pause here. Yeah. Now I spill Swedish and Russian vodka into my morning coffee, rocket fuel for Rocket Man, and blue bubble helmet happily hiding my scarred face, fling my Burn Man motorcycle with the ape-hanger handlebars down the wet island highway, hoping for fractious friction and the thrill of metal fatigue, hoping to meet someone traumatic, a ring of fire. I rejetted the carburetor in my bike, went to super trap pipes, wanting more horses and torque, wanting the machine to scream. Before I became Burn Man, the Texas woman kissed me at the bottom of her yellow stairs, porch dark as tar, dark as sky, and her cozy form fast leaning against me, disturbing the hidden powers. Airsat's cowboys upstairs drinking long necks and blabbing over Graham Parsons and Eddie Harris. Impatient taxi waiting and waiting as we kissed. I had not expected her to kiss me, to teach me herself, her mouth and form, her warm image driven like a nail into my mind, her memory jammed on that loop of tape. In that instant, I was changed. Now I'm the clown outside Bed of Roses, the franchise flower shop beside the dentist office on the road to Damascus, the road to Highway 61. On Saturdays, I wave white gloves to passing cars, dark, shark-like taxis, myopic headlights, and helium balloons with smiley faces bump my wrecked and now abandoned mouth. Where have all the old Finn cars swum to? Pedestrians hate me, fear me. Pedestrians edge by the bus stop bench where the sidewalk is too narrow. Pedestrians avoid my eyes, my psychedelic fright wig. I want to reassure them, hey dudes, I'm not a mime, different union. And I have to mention here, this part is also biographical. My kids, I was walking with them, I was working in the story and I was walking with them. And there was a clown by the street who was doing this advertising a flower shop or something back. And they were terrified. They were like, I don't want to walk there. I don't want to walk there. And so I thought, okay, I've got to use that. And I used the idea too that he would have to get jobs that covered his face. So there's different things, but it was that passage is actually just by kids. Like they didn't want to go on the sidewalk by him. At Easter, I'm a giant gray rabbit, but I can't do Santa. I could definitely use the do-re-mi, but the beard isn't enough cover for my droopy right eye and melted cheek. The beard isn't enough to save face. And also, I confess to trouble with the constant ho, ho, ho. Dignity is essential. I attempt to apply to a passing priest, but I start coughing like a moron. Drugs, too, I finally sputter. Essential. He moves on. Brother or sister, I may appear in ink costume at your apartment door, will deliver a singing telegram in a serviceable tenor. My gray rabbit suit needs a little bleach. Dignity is essential. Burn Man must have his face covered, bases covered. I'm different animals. In the winter nights, I'm the mascot, Mighty Moose, for our junior hockey team down at Memorial Arena. You may recall TV heads and columnists frowning on my bloody fight with the other team's Raving the Raven mascot. I'm glad you laughed because I do find this funny. I think it's just a ridiculous scene. All the skaters were scrapping. Gary Glitter rock and roll part booming on the sound system. And then both goalies started throwing haymakers. I thought the mascot should also duke it out. A sense of symmetry and loyalty. I banged at the old world armor of that Raven's narrow, serious face, snapped his head back. Hooves were my advantage. Later we went for a drink or three and laughed about our fight. Raven and Moose at a small bar table, comparing notes and bloody abrasions. Hooves and talons around each other. Shop talk at the gin bar. Don't fuck with me, rummy beer jammers and balls of bean counters snarl at every bar on the island, as if they alone decide when they get fucked over. I could advise them on that. I didn't decide that the camp would blow to shrapnel with me curled inside like a ball turret gunner. They hunkered down at the commercial hotel, a Blue Peter Marina, a Beehive Tap, or Luna Lounge, thinking they're deep, thinking one ugly room is the universe's center because they're there with flaming drinks by the lost highway. Clouds hanging like clocks over the Japanese coal ships and the Coast Guard chopper. And across the water, a distant town gleaming the green colors of wine and traffic. I sit and listen to their hyena patter, their thin sipping and brooding and laughing. Sometimes I'm still wearing my clown outfit while drinking my face off. Why take it off? Friday night, a man was kicked to death in this bar. In that instant, like me, he was changed. His memory jammed on a loop in a jar of wind, living the blues, dying. At my front door, a rhododendron sheds its scarlet petals one by one. A dark blue teacup sits on my rainy steps, looking beautiful and lonely. And there's a bird in the woods that sounds like a car trying to start. One Sunday session, a man lifted his golf shirt to show me his bowel obstruction surgery scar. Yeah, I'm glad you're laughing. His navel shoved 4 inches to the left. He didn't mind getting fucked over. In fact, he guffawed gruffly at his own wrecked gut. We're so pliant, I thought, prone to melt, to a change of heart, to lend our tongue vows. I who loved the status quo, like things to stay the same, even when they were bad. I who didn't want to break up with Dolly Varden girlfriends when it was obvious to everyone that we should get it over with. Then the camper door flies off. Kablooey, goodbye, Louie. I who loved the status quo. Oh, does I need that one? No, that one can go. I'm different animals now, new careers and finding oxygen, careering and hammering to the Dolomite campground, to fall on your tent, to fall on my sword. Home, I want to go home, darling. Take me back to Tulsa. The skin is the largest organ. Mine's a little out of tune. Your skin square footage is, geez, how the hell should I know? Far more than your heart, which gets all the good press, attracts the spin doctors and diligent German scalpels. Perhaps my burn man skin is more accurate now, what we all become after a certain age, parched animals, palimpsest in wrinkled uniforms, clowns hanging at the pet food mart, wading to the indifferent flow of traffic and shiny, happy people. I stare at a bottle of German wheat beer, inhaling softest froth in my mouth, breathing in something good like a virus, like breathing oxygen and perfume with a woman's Norwegian hair all over your face. I am the way, I say to the drunken bottle. I am truth, heresy, evidence of what none of us wish to admit, that appearance is everything, that surface is God and God is surface. Appearance, the white mare we chase every minute of every day, looks and youth. We say this isn't so, no sir, no sir, no, no, no. We insist appearance counts for very little. But then I am walking at you, an ancient bog monster limping on the teensy sidewalk with my face like a TV jammed on the wrong channel. And at that sideways juncture, all of us, me included, decide shallow is not that bad. Let us, we decide, worship and grovel at the Church of Shallow. Only Tuesday did I need a drink, my teeth caught in my teeth. Down to the Starfish Room, the Yukon Jacks, down to the sea in ships, hulls dragging on our city's concrete. Flame created me with its sobering sound. Wake up, Flame whispered in my ear like a woman on a porch, like muttering into cotton, a rush to action. It was ushering, acting on me, eating me. A little closer to the end. I'm its parent, I'm its home, and people worry they might catch it from me, catch ugliness, catch chaos theory, catch something catchy. The baby doctor caught me when I came out in fluid, and my mother held me as a baby. Such smooth baby skin. My skin dipped in baptismal water at St. John's. They washed away original sin. She held my perfect skin, my original skin. They lit fat candles in the cathedral, and I came out in fluid in University Hospital. It's a motif of fluids and waters. The woman on the Texas porch said my skin was soft and that she loved my smell. No one ever said that before, and no one said it after. She created me. As a kid, I was burnt by the summer sun in Penticton. My aunt from England peeled a section of skin from my back, and she still has that piece of skin in a scrapbook in London. Remember that map they torched at the very beginning of each episode of Bonanza? Does anyone know the TV show Bonanza? I always loved that as a kid. I watched every week as a kid, and when the flames came, I thought, Nito torpedo. I thought, cool. Where are my lost eyebrows? Did they fly up, 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 or drift down as delicate ash, floating like some unformed haiku on a winter lake? One more page here. There we go. My eyebrows got the fuck out of Dodge. Flames went up and down me as they pleased. Fire didn't have to obey pecking order or stop work orders. Kids in pajamas watched me burn like Guy Fawkes, watched me dwell in possibilities. The doctor, with zero bedside manner, said the trick was simply to consider your face a convenience, not an ornament. Thanks for that, Doc. Maybe I could take a razor to him, see if he still debates function versus ornament after I cut him a new face. Hate is everything they said it would be, and it waits for you like an airbag. You have to learn to deal with your anger, they said in the hospital. I am dealing with my anger. I'm dealing with my anger by hating people. That's the end. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Gosh, it's like being on a roller coaster. There's so much going on. You read it really nicely, thank you. So you made a reference earlier to fragments and collecting things, and I mean, is that insofar as you have a process what it's about? Do you have a notebook, or are you always jotting down little fragments?
I've got notebooks like crazy. Like
Yeah.
I had to downsize. I was moving stuff out of the house, and I was thinking, this is obsessive. Like there's just boxes and boxes of old journals and notebooks. Oh, sorry. Keep forgetting. Yeah, I have lots of notebooks, and I have to write stuff down or I forget it. And so I've got just scraps of paper, and I use old exam booklets from the university, and I use actual notebooks. But yeah, I have to write stuff all the time. Yep. Well, I don't write poetry that much anymore. There is another Mark Jarman in the States who's better known for poetry. I did a volume of poetry when I was kind of younger and more sensitive, but it was like putting a book down a well, and I just thought, well, I think I'll just put the same stuff into fiction or nonfiction. So I just really try to, and I actually think there's some great poets who've been real influences on me, but I think a lot of the poetry scene, the bar is too low. I think people just, they like, oh, bird on the branch, I'm so sensitive. Like, I don't know. I just think a lot was not very good. But there's certain poets, like going back to T.S. Eliot, but also when I was at Iowa, I heard about Dennis Johnson, and he later became a really good short story writer, but I only knew him then as poets. And
I'm glad you went to Eliot, because Eliot is a great poet of fragment.
Exactly, yeah.
The Wasteland is, is a extraordinary collection, little fragments put together. He makes references to it towards the end of the structure.
Yeah.
Was that sort of stuff pretty influential when you were getting started?
Well, yeah, I'm a sponge, so I mean, I just read all the time, and I pick up stuff all the time. So I find it really hard when I have to say what is the influence, because there's just so many. But I did mention to my editor Metcalf, about what I'm doing, like with fragments. Eliot was doing it 100 years ago, and yet somehow in print things are more conservative. Like you watch a video, and it's just jump cuts and like crazy. But then you get on the page and people are like, oh, I can't follow that. I don't want that. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why print is so conservative. Because
of course, sitting behind Eliot was none other than our own Dante.
Oh, yeah.
Who first got going with the idea of you have a narrative structure, and then you have numerous little fragments all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then opened up a book of poets and handed it to me, written by an Italian poet of the 13th century.
It's more enjoying. Yeah.
And so you're part of a grand tradition now. People are just really loving words
Yeah.
and using words to tell stories.
Yeah. I like that.
In different ways. You know?
But I don't mind if people write other ways. Like, I don't mind that Stephen King exists. And I think some people, Jane Austen is amazing. Like she writes these stories, a really good plot, and I admire them, but I can't do it. And even that I've attempted a couple novels, but I just know my brain is geared to the short story. Like I just like that. And I can just get in a trance working on a story. And with a novel, I'm just like, well, there's this part, there's this part, there's this part. And so I have to pull out small sections and just work on them that way, like a story.
How long are your novels?
I can't remember. There's a hockey novel, and even that I had a subtitle of a herky jerky picaresque because I wanted it to be like the episodic, and it was a hockey player. And every time I got stuck, I'd get him traded to another team. Okay, he's going to LA. Now I had a whole section then in LA. But yeah, I'm just not. My brain's not wired for the longer form, and something with the short one.
We go on here.
There. In everything, right? So the jar of the wind, so the jar of the wind. There's rhythm, as you had said earlier, rhythm is there in the short story, the poetry is there. It's quite beautiful.
Well, thank you. I mean, I hope that I don't sit down and say today I'm going to write poetic fiction, but it just seems to come out though. And I do collect like that, Joy in the Window. It's just a fragment, and I think, where can I put it in? Where can I put it in? And so
there was, of course, another Irishman who did write very long novels in an intensely poetic style. Ulysses.
James Joyce, yeah. Actually, I went to Trieste because of James Joyce. I was interested in that.
So,
yeah.
The short story that you read us, the second one, makes me think of a collage. Pieces fragments that stand alone, but then you put them together and there are connections between each one.
Mm-hmm.
A collage works because each individual fragment has a relationship with each other and comes all together to make one whole. And it made me think of a collage.
Yeah. Well, I hope that, because I'm not good with plot, so I have to compensate other ways. So I try to just find some kind of structure, even if it's through repetition or images showing up. And but I do try to work on that. I have a collection of stories set in Italy, a Knife Party at the Hotel Europa, and that was originally a novel. I tried and it just didn't work, and became a collection of stories. But in that, I really tried to have an arc throughout. It's the same characters through every story. I tried to have it, felt like it moved towards something. And again, sometimes to me, it's a gut feeling. It's not a science. You just feel like, I want to feel like you got to something by the end. And so that's what I hope for. There is a sense that something was different even at the end.
that gives me a chance to pivot neatly to your travel writing. And quite a lot of the travel writing is in Italy. Other bits are in Croatia and around that part of the world. Some in Ireland and some in Canada. And China also. You've been all over the place. So talk to me a little bit about traveling. What is your approach to traveling, and then how that morphs into some of the travel writing? Then you're going to read a bit when we finish talking about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm always in denial. I don't think of myself as a jet setter, but something will take me somewhere. Like Shanghai, there was a short story conference. It was a group I was involved with every 2 years, maybe in Cork, be in Vienna, but then 1 year was Shanghai, and my son was in Korea working, and so I thought, well, this will be good. I'll get a little bit of help with travel, going to a conference, and I can go visit him. And so otherwise, I probably wouldn't have got to Shanghai. And I have to say, I was not entirely happy in Shanghai, but I ended up writing about 4 different pieces about it. And then Mumbai, I got an email from the Canadian consulate saying, would you come to this festival if you were invited? And I was like, well, I wouldn't go to Mumbai on my own, but yeah. And they said, is there help with the travel or hotel? And they said, yeah, we'll help with that stuff. So I said, yeah. And And again, Mumbai, I cannot say I was happy, but it was wild. Like it was a real experience. And I was teaching, so I could only get away for a short visit. And of course, I got sick. So coming home, I was, just where's the washroom? Where's the washroom? Where's the washroom? And then I saw Clarissa at the airport. And I'm kind of ashamed of this, but I said, I don't care if India and Pakistan blow each other up. But so I'm not I'm not also happy job, but then it feeds the writing. So like I just ended up writing more about Shanghai and Mumbai than I ever thought I would. And, so you never know; it's very random.
Even those are quite short visits, you're saying.
Some of them, yeah, some are very short.
Because some of your travel writing feels like you got a lot of space and a lot of time.
Yeah,
I think this trip you're in Italy for several weeks.
2 months here. Yeah.
Is that? I mean, does that produces a different kind of work, or?
Well, we kind of want to just come somewhere, drop our luggage, and stay and get to know a place, and not try to do 3 days in Rome, 1 day in Florence, and so we just try to. But we came to Florence last year, and then we just felt really comfortable, so we came back again this year.
You'll be back. Look at this room full of people who came once.
People once, yeah. I went to Ireland a lot though because my mother is Irish, my father's English, and so I went to both places. And I wrote a book called Ireland's Eye about because my grandfather was a cooper for Guinness and drowned during the Irish Civil War, and I wanted to find out what had happened. And so I did a lot of trips to Ireland, and it was great because my cousins were there. And they were, a lot of them were around my age, so you just go out with them, and it was like research. Like I got family stories, and so it was quite enjoyable. Go to the pub, and it's research going toward a book. But then I guess Clarissa, Venice is her favorite city in the world. I think is that fair? And so I actually thought Venice was overcrowded, touristy, pricey. It turned out to be all of those things, but it also turns out to be an amazing place. Like there's no way I like it. And also, I guess the random element. The university asked if I wanted to teach a travel writing course in Rome one summer, and I'd never been to Italy, and I'd been going to Ireland. And it's again the kind of thing I wouldn't have got there, so I just jumped on it. And there wasn't even that much money, but it was just a really good experience. So that was 2008, I think, was my first time to Italy. So I'm not an expert at all on Italy, but Clarissa loves Venice, and we spent some time there. We were in Venice February 2020. You might remember that date when COVID hit. So it was amazing because we saw Venice empty. It was really great. It was a little bit scary, but just empty. And then, then I think we were having trouble booking a place to stay, and then you looked at Florence and thought, well, this is actually cheaper in Florence. And so, I didn't know anything about it, but I looked, the Renaissance, I'll go there. So then it's been good that way. But it's very random nature of the traveling. I almost feel embarrassed or like it's bourgeois. Oh, yeah, I've been to India, Shanghai. Like, 'cause I don't feel like that's me.
You're better off down in the bar and the hockey. You're better off watching hockey in the bar. That's your natural habitat.
Well, or if I need a bar in Florence, right?
Perfect. You've got a piece in the minutes of travel writing in Rome.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah.
That will explain what we're doing.
Let me find that. See that piece.
I like it too. Yeah. I've got it here if you want.
Okay. That's the one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find it here.
Oh, because have you got your marker off?
Yeah.
Take your time.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I love that she spoke about it being like a collage. I kind of thought before of a rich tapestry with just layers. I think you can just peel away, or an amazing dish where you peel
sort of phyllo pastry, and in between each layer there's something different. And I think it's fascinating and it's wonderful and it's exhausting because it's almost like you can just keep going back and you see more almost.
But it's not fat.
No,
It's healthy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I found it.
Okay.
Looking a mess here. Okay. So this needs a little bit of setup. It's set in Rome and mentions Naples. And I mentioned newspaper clippings. I read a clipping. It was actually, it took place in New Brunswick, where I live in Canada. And there was a stabbing where someone came to a party and they asked him to go, and he left. He came back with a staple gun and stapled the guy in the leg for some reason. So someone else then went out and got a knife and stabbed the guy in the leg. Not mean, I think it was just tit for tat, but severed the femoral artery. And at the party, he actually bled out and died, like, walked a few steps and fell. And so I saw this clipping and I thought, that's a story right there. But I was working on scenes in Naples, which is known for being violent. So I feel guilty because I put this scene that was actually in Canada into Naples, and poor Naples gets blamed for it. And there's also a mention of Tom Hanks and my narrator both wanting to be Pope. And so I feel like I have to mention that because it comes up later. So this is the hospital island. Eve hovers near another varnished painting, cracked faces and black shadows, the stone church cool and quiet, mysterious as a suicide on a bridge, and all that sunshine just outside, a dark chapel bent under endless stone light. Studying the immortals makes me feel so very mortal, staring up at shadowy paintings and marble faces speaking of sorrow, crazily amazing ceilings, frescoes and colors like faint laughter from within planets, and angels and saints flying up into the sun, flying from sin and guilt. And collections of gilt Byzantine icons, metallic paintings of Madonnas in blue robes with a tiny child and aquiline faces bent into long cubist angles. I don't know if you know those Byzantine faces. I just love the way some of them look like really long, exaggerated face. These devout Byzantine faces make her jump up and tear across an ancient map to know Istanbul's Eastern empires and all the Virgin Mary's collection of custard yellow halos and cobalt gowns. Pliny the Elder tore around the ancient papyrus maps. I have an image of Pliny when he was much younger, as if I were on the deck of his wooden boat, part of his crew, and Pliny, my captain, cutting the waves in a speedy Arab felucca, Birkins lashed down with sharp sails snapping and swinging around my sunburned face. In the Roman sun, I hang my white shirts to dry near a lazaretto, the hospital island named after the beggar Lazarus, the island where they sent plague victims on open barges to the sea. And I wonder, how does Eve's skin feel and smell? And what is it to cradle her limbs on a high Irish hill and feel her shirt, feel her shadow move over me like a cloud on gold grass? Mr. Tom Hanks has been zero help in my campaign to be Pope. I must now consider Tom Hanks an adversary. Memo, no more causes. Unlike me, Tom has the money to run a real campaign. He's well liked. He may be the next Pope instead of me, Tom waving from the balcony. Tell me, is luck a thing to manufacture like a set of tires? And by the way, there's a reason for Tom being here. When I was in Rome with the class, he was filming one of his horrible films. And it just shows how mean I can be. There were students who were gaga about Tom Hanks. And so we started making up Tom Hanks sightings and saying, oh, we went to this pizza place and he all bought us pizza. And they were like, how come we never run into him? So I kept making up this stuff. So anyways, so I ended up using him. Late at night, I can't stop listening to Cat Power's troubled cover of Moonshining. Listen over and over to her lament. If the drinking do not kill me. Her ghostly voice seems to accrue more distant meaning and weight than the song's plain words should ever be able to convey. It's a spooky puzzle, and I keep trying to figure it out. At 2 a.m., the matter seems of utmost importance. Eve downloads music on her laptop. She's a student of Italian opera, but also likes drum and blues and alt country, her strange authority. Eve says she can't stop thinking of the art we've seen, like so much chocolate, too many treasures for one spot. We whisper to each other in the gallery, how is it all collected here in one spot? How many robbed and murdered in its superb suspect provenance? Eve says the big thieves hang the little thieves. The groaning galleries and museums are too much to take in at once. We stagger as if eating too much. It's staggering, but that rich swag is why we are here. Our sheets and shirts spread on the bright terrace as we taste apples from Afghanistan and dates from the Euphrates and juice from blood oranges. It's so lovely to eat outside with a view of this fabled city. Mangoes and blood oranges, mangoes her new favorite. And Eve waves a tiny knife to demonstrate how to peel the lovely skin. Eve smiles widely. Remember we saw that huge fish jump in the tide? What timing, just as we walked up. She seems bright today. Is sleep coming easier at night? Will we ever be reconciled with a knife at the party? Will the mind forget the body twitching in the hall and the dead man's daughter weeping? All of those body parts worked as a perfect machine until the introduction of the knife into the sensitive wires under the surface. We escaped to the silent train and the town's closed shutters. What's Italian for blood oranges, Eve says? I should know. In Gaspé, the laundry lines are so noisy, flapping in the winds off the sea. But in Rome, her sheets are silent in sun and heat. No noise or fanfare as moisture exits the cotton. Cloth dries in moments. Are you peckish? I have some smoked salmon and honeydew apples. We'll eat and then go wander. When wandering, I enjoy happy accidents, enjoy my mind's momentary lapses, and forget where I am. I wandered through Piazza Cavour the other afternoon and found a huge bruised palazzo fronted by groves of shaggy palm trees, tropical palm trees, erotic statues, and stone plinths. This otherworldly palazzo decorated like a Cuban wedding cake, such long stripes of ornate balcony and porticos and fluttering doves, and steroid blossoms pushed toward me from every meaty tree in the piazza. In Rome, I walked someone else's fever dream of Latin America. What a dream, what a bewitching city, where they beat the shit out of St. Valentine, the patron saint of lovers, beat St. Valentine with clubs and separated him from his head. In this concussed city, Eve cooks a beautiful omelet of market eggs and goat cheese. In my tiny kitchen, she chops spinach and green onions and layers a thin membrane of smoked salmon within the eggs. She wields a sharp knife. Does my cousin wish to kill me, leave me twitching? No, she slices her creation so neatly, half for her mouth and half for mine. And on the terrace, her tender omelet melts on her tongue, the best I've ever tasted. Later we'll walk fountain to fountain, drift palace to palace, painting to painting. But first we eat and drink at our small table on my sunny terrace. Excuse me. Tomorrow we'll go to Cannaregio and sit at the canal drinking chalices of frosty white beer and eating tiny cicchetti from the charming bartender with a shaven skull. I travel so large a world that my favorite is the tiny world we create when two people are kind to each other. That's the end of
So, I was thinking, sorry, excuse me. Getting prepared for this session, I read some of the travel writing on. I really love it. It's beautiful. You take these little moments of things that happen as you're wandering around Rome or Shanghai, whatever, and then you build out from then all over the place. And then it's just it's the exact opposite to sort of guidebooks, but it's much more revealing about the place you're in. It's interesting, yeah. So, any last thoughts before we crack open some wine, and we can continue the conversation over the wine? There's a whole bunch of books over there. The Blind Man book, which is a collection of short stories across your whole writing career, I think, isn't it? And yeah. Yeah, so it's the essential reader for Mark, recommended. And Mark, I imagine you'll be happy to sign if anyone picks up a copy. So Sylvia, where are you? Bring the wine in. And a couple of questions.
I was just curious if you ever show your work to anyone before it's finished, like Clarissa or someone else.
Well, I used to when I was younger. I was in workshops and always showed stuff. Got a workshop and got feedback. But then something changed, and I kind of hide it more, keep it closer to myself until I feel like it's getting closer. But I definitely lean on Clarissa for editing and even just questions like what about this versus this. But yeah, something changed. I'm not sure why, but I just became much more private with it, kind of clinging to it. I think I just wanted it to get to a certain point before, and because I'll send it to a stranger in another city. I should use the mic. I'll send it to a stranger in Toronto or something, that magazine, but I don't like to just show it all around, I don't know why, but that changed.
To be accepted in a publication.
Or rejected.
And you get criticism. Do you get criticism, or do they say I like this and not that? I mean, and if you do, how do you receive that?
It's pretty rare to get feedback unless they take the piece, and then if they take the piece, they sometimes add it. The actual title story, Burn Man, the Texas Porch, was accepted by the Georgia Review in the States, and the editor there, we went through it like line by line, and I said to him, I didn't know anyone did this anymore. Like, I was really surprised. It was amazing. But I often, like at the Fiddlehead, if I take a story, I'll often say, I'm interested in the story, ask if it's still free, but also, like, do you think you could revisit the ending? I'm never happy with endings, so I'm always trying to get writers, whether they're students or writers at the magazine. Well, I don't like that, but then I think I'm pretty good with editing, but I'm also kind of headstrong. So I sometimes just think, I know the way I want it, but I find, like with workshops, I could tell, like, you get a comment and think that doesn't apply to me, but other times I think, oh, I didn't see that at all. Like, it's really hard to see your own writing. It's hard to edit your own stuff. And I think the more you do, you get better at it. But at first, I really needed feedback. And then it was just times I thought, I can tell they're right. They're right on that. Other times, because it's contradictory. Like, someone will say, love this scene. Someone else say, hate that scene. This dialogue's really good. Others say that dialogue's implausible. And so you have to have some ego and some sense of what you're doing. But you've also got to really be open, to editing. And editing's like, Margaret Atwood has an editor. Michael Ondaatje has an editor. Like, it's just normal to get it. And you hope for a good one. Like I mentioned, Ray Carver, and there was some kind of mini scandal that Gordon Lish apparently really edited his stuff like crazy. And I just thought, well, that's what you want, like, was Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot, he Pound almost rewrote for there's The Wasteland, is it? Yeah, like, so so part of me does resist, but another part of me will look and say, oh, yeah, I'll come around to that, or I'll wait a day or two and look at it again. Because, I think most writers want to just hear, oh, you're genius, and if you don't, yeah, so.
A terrible thing sometimes happens to very successful writers, that they escape the editor and publish rubbish.
That's true. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My question is that, as far as I know, writing was not your main occupation for a long time. And when I do something like something creative, like a hobby, it goes easy. But when it starts like my main profession, I feel much pressure. Did it change for you when you just stopped doing your previous job and you just focused on writing? Thank you.
No, I hadn't noticed that because I was always teaching, and before that I had jobs with driving trucks and busboy and stuff, and I just had to learn to write whatever I could. You know, when you got a job, when you got kids and demands, and I've just retired within the last 2 years, so I find it's great. Like it's just kind of nice. So I don't feel pressure that way. I mean, maybe at some point I will, but I don't know. I think again, it's probably different for every person. Like I never ever have writer's block because I've just got scraps of paper all over the dining room table, and so it's just like, am I going to have this or use that image or use that? So I guess I just don't worry about stuff like that. I'm just happy if I can, and I don't work 9 to 5 at writing. Like I write whenever I feel like it, you know, and I'll go to the bar and do some writing, and you know, and I don't write in the morning. I'm not a morning person at all.
There's a wonderful true story about a very successful British novelist who, when he emerged, and people were just amazed by the quality of his books, he was driving London buses, a guy called Magnus Mills. And he wrote 4 or 5 really good novels whilst he was driving buses. And now he's successful enough. He got a big advance on the 5th one, and so he stopped driving buses. Yeah. And he couldn't write anymore. Oh, really? His 5th novel was a kind of real, very difficult, and it wasn't as successful. It wasn't as good. So he went back to driving delivery vans.
Really?
And I completely right. So everything's fine. So different people, different stuff. Anyhow, so I think we'll wrap up the formal part. Books for sale over there. We're going to station back on the lectern now for your signing in place. Sylvia's got the wine over there. So enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.